The Secret Door Network. Book 1, The Quiet Door. Chapter 20, The Final Puzzle. The hidden chamber behind the second door had left Lina, May, and Violet more alert than ever. 1-800-5194. This cryptic message about trust and players weighed heavily on their minds as they made their way back to the surface. The once exhilarating puzzle solving had turned into a deeper, more treacherous game where not everyone was playing fairly. Back in the fresh night air outside the old train station, the trio paused, catching their breath. The streets were quiet, and the men who had been following them were nowhere to be seen. Violet broke the silence. What do you think he meant by, "It's not about doors anymore"? If it's not about finding doors, what's next? Lina glanced down at the notebook she had taken from the second chamber. The weight of it felt different now, more than just another step in the puzzle. They were dealing with a larger web. It's about players now. He's shifting the focus. The doors were just the beginning. May nodded, though her expression was uneasy. We're not just finding clues anymore. We're in the middle of a race, and those men made it clear they're not the only ones involved. We need to figure out who else is playing. Lina opened the notebook again, flipping through its worn pages. This time, the notes were messier, almost rushed, as if 1-800-51194 had been preparing for something bigger than they could have imagined. The last page held a new riddle, scribbled hastily. To win the game, you must know the players. But the last puzzle is not where you expect. It lies within the one who knows you best. Violet frowned, reading the riddle over Lina's shoulder. The one who knows us best? What does that even mean? Lina thought for a moment, her mind racing. He's always played mind games, but this feels personal, like it's not just about puzzles anymore. It's about people. May folded her arms, deep in thought. We've been following his clues for months. He's been inside our network, watching us. Maybe he means the answer is within the network itself. Lina's eyes widened. Or maybe it's within him. Violet raised an eyebrow. You think 1-800-5194 is the final puzzle? Lina nodded slowly. It makes sense. He's been guiding us this whole time, but he's also been manipulating us, forcing us to think a certain way, play by his rules. What if the real puzzle is figuring out who he is? May stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. But how do we do that? He's been anonymous this entire time. We don't even know where to start. Violet grinned. Maybe that's exactly what he wants. He's giving us the final challenge. Find out who he is. They all stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation sinking in. 1-800-5194 had been their guide and their antagonist, but now they realized that to finish the game, they had to uncover his identity. It was the ultimate riddle, one that spanned both the network they had built and the real world they now navigated. Lina glanced at the notebook again, her mind churning through the possibilities. We need to go back to the beginning. Every clue he's ever given us, every interaction on the message board, everything he's done, it's all part of the puzzle. If we can trace his steps, we might find out who he really is. May nodded, determination in her eyes. Let's start digging. The three of them spent the next several days combing through every trace of 1-800-5194 that they could find. His riddles, his posts, even the encrypted layers he had left behind in the network. They tracked every clue, every breadcrumb he had scattered, but it was like chasing shadows. Each time they thought they were close, he slipped through their fingers, leaving only more questions. Then, late one night, as they sat together at the brew, something clicked. Lina was scrolling through the earliest messages on the board, the ones from when they had first started the platform, when she noticed something she had overlooked before. Wait, Lina said, her voice sharp with realization. Look at this. May and Violet leaned in as Lina pointed to an early message from call 1-800-5194. He's talking about blockchain encryption, right? But look at the way he phrases it. He's giving us advice, but it's like he's already part of the team. Violet frowned. You think he's one of us? Lina shook her head. Not exactly, but he knew things about our platform that no one else should have. From the very beginning, he's been ahead of us. May sat back, her eyes wide with realization. What if he was one of our early testers? someone we brought into the network before it was open to the public. Lina's heart raced as she pieced it together. That's it. He's been with us since the start. He was part of the original group that helped us build this. Violet's jaw dropped. That would explain everything. Why he's always a step ahead, why he knows the network better than anyone. Lina quickly pulled up the logs from their early days, scrolling through the list of users who had been granted access to the platform before it went public. There were only a handful of names, and one stood out. There, Lina said, pointing to the screen. That's him. The username was familiar, but not because of the riddles. It was a name they had seen in the background, someone who had contributed to the early stages of the project, quietly offering advice and solving problems without drawing attention to themselves. Violet leaned in closer, her eyes wide. That's him? He's been with us the whole time? Lina nodded, her mind spinning. He's been playing this game with us from the start. May stared at the screen, stunned. But why? Why go through all this just to hide behind puzzles? Lina closed her laptop, a sense of closure settling over her. Because that's who he is. He's a player, just like us, but he's also the one who set the rules. The game had been about doors, puzzles, and secrets, but in the end, it had been about discovering the identity of the one who had started it all. 1-800-5194 was one of their own, hidden in plain sight, guiding them toward this final moment. And now, they had solved the last puzzle. Violet smiled, leaning back in her chair. So what now? Lina looked at her friends, a quiet sense of satisfaction in her eyes. Now, we decide what happens next. The game is over, but we're the ones who get to write the next chapter. The three women sat together in silence, the weight of their journey settling over them. They had solved the final riddle, unlocked the last door, and discovered the truth behind 1-800-5194. But the future was theirs to shape. The network they had built was still growing, and now they were ready to take control. The quiet hum of the coffee shop surrounded them as they looked ahead, ready for whatever came next.